me. I am a 5th year veterinary medicine student at the University of Surrey, and I'm also a tutor, an online tutor for Medic Mind, Study Mind, and I've tutored veterinary medicine applications for the last year now. So yeah, we'll just get into it. Please do ask all the questions that you might possibly have. This is the code to do it at the top, just in case anyone missed it. Please follow that, and you can ask pretty much anything. I'll be happy to answer it. So I took a gap year before I applied to veterinary. That was mainly because I didn't get my chemistry grade, which is a little bit gutting. Ended up being a really good experience. I got loads more work experience. I had a part-time job so I could save up some money before I started university. And the interviews were so much easier the second time around anyway. I ended up getting all 4 offers. So I got into Surrey, obviously, Bristol and Liverpool. And Surrey was my firm choice. Definitely don't regret that. I've absolutely loved it. I'm now 4 weeks away from graduating. So yeah, applying to veterinary medicine is definitely a little bit scary. It can be a little bit intimidating, but hopefully this presentation will help answer some of the questions you have, and we can signpost you to further resources at the end. Oh, I think I skipped a slide there, but that's fine. So what A-levels do you need to study veterinary? So I'm not sure what level you're at the minute, but you do need to do A-levels to go to vet school. Some courses will allow entry with specific BTECs, but definitely check with the schools individually because that is quite niche and quite specific. But generally, you always need biology and chemistry. Some universities, like things like Cambridge, and I think the Scottish ones as well, will require you to have another science, so 3 sciences, so that will either be physics or maths. For other vet schools, any A-level generally is fine, apart from things like general studies and things like that. So I did biology, chemistry, and history as my 3rd one. Definitely check with the specific universities that you want to apply to. So I know that I wanted to either go to RVC, Liverpool, or Surrey, and all of them only needed chemistry and biology. In that case, pick an A-level that you enjoy, because the A-level requirements are quite high, so it definitely makes it easier for yourself if you can study something that you enjoy and that you'll do well in. So do you need to do an additional entry exam? Generally no, unless you want to apply to Cambridge again, in which case you take the NSAA exam, which is in November, sorry. So you apply in October, you'll sit your exam, and then you'll be invited to interview. We do have an additional webinar on the 29th, so next week, and there is a link there that you should be able to see. So definitely join that if you are interested. And for all the other vet schools, you don't need to do an additional entry exam. Work experience is such a big one, and I think it's really important to understand why you have to do work experience to apply to vet school. And it isn't about, like, it's not a tick box exercise. It's not about, finding the coolest work experience that you could possibly get. It's not even really about doing as much as possible. It's about picking quality experiences that firstly make sure that you actually want to be a vet, because there's nothing worse than kind of doing a 5-year course and realizing it's not for you. And secondly, make sure that you're aware of kind of what goes into being a vet. So what are the values? What are the challenges? What do vets do in society? So they're the 3 things that I would look for when doing work experience. So generally with work experience, there's kind of a split. So you have clinical work experience, which is working in vet practices. And even again, you've got small animal, farm, equine, specialist hospitals. And then you have your animal husbandry work experience, which is just as important. It's really important that you go to vet school feeling confident handling animals, understanding kind of what goes wrong with them. But even more so than that, it's understanding, like when you're a vet and you go out and visit these yards or these farms, that you actually understand what goes on there and what the animals are used for and what we expect from them and things like that. So I did a lot of animal husbandry, which I really enjoyed. I did like horse riding yards, farms, kennels, catteries, and then I was quite lucky that I had quite a mixed experience of clinical work experience. Clinical can be quite hard to get, So generally, if you're struggling, look for small animal practices because they're more likely to take you on for work experience. I didn't do any kind of standout work experience. I know there's a lot of pressure on people to find out things like that. Realistically, it's not going to give you an advantage unless you've really learned something specific from it. The only one I would say that I did, which was a little bit more unique, was I did go to an abattoir before I started vet school. Again, it's not compulsory, but it definitely gave me a bigger insight into the role of vets. And I mean, it didn't put me off, so that was always a good thing. So we've got a quiz now, so you should be able to access this if you have put the code in at the top. So it's just this code here. You pop it into this website and you'll be able to join in with the quiz. So I think we'll give it a couple more seconds, hopefully some more people to join. So we've got 2 players currently, so it'd be great to have a few more of you. Okay, we'll go ahead and get started. And if you weren't able to join, don't worry. You can always join in at home. So what is good work experience? So we've got in clinical settings, observational, practical, more than one day, in more than one place, in more than one role. Let's see what the results have said. So we've got in more than one place, in more than one role, absolutely. This is a bit of a trick question because they're all right. So you should have absolutely a bit of diversity in the types of roles of a vet, where a vet might work. Universities generally look for placements that are 5 days long, but 2 weeks, again, is also a great amount of time to have. Practical is more your animal husbandry, so getting involved with the animals, and in clinical settings, it'll be more observational. So really well done, guys. So this is just what we talked about. So it's really important that you understand what the different roles of the vet are. And it's also important to make sure that you do actually want to be a vet. And I think some of my best interview answers have definitely been where I've been able to reflect on my work experience and what I've learned from it, what I've taken from it, and how it's going to make me kind of a better vet student as well. So when you go to work experience, definitely keep in mind that it's not a tick box exercise and that you really should be, present and taking it in and trying to research and ask as many questions as possible. So what word would you describe a good personal statement? And I believe you guys can answer this one as well. So again, if you'd like to join, here's the code at the top, and this is the website to use it for. Got one answer already, perfect. Describes, great. Any more answers? Shows your passion, absolutely, that's a really good one. Reflective, absolutely. That is my favorite word to use or favorite skill when I'm talking about interview prep. So that's fantastic. Shows your passion again, absolutely. Personal, absolutely. So the entry requirements to vet school, so many people apply a year, it's very competitive, and you want your personal statement to stand out. It doesn't need to stand out in terms of, you have this big, exciting work experience, but they want to learn more about you as an individual. So personal is a really great word to use there. Amazing, guys. Well done. Thank you for joining in with that. So yeah, your personal statement is kind of your initial presentation to a university. So they haven't invited you for an interview yet. They might not have even asked you to do any of the work experience questionnaires, anything like that. It's probably the very first contact you'll have with the university. So it is really important. It's only 4,000 characters long, so it's not very long at all. And you want it to be reflective, show you're passionate, and be personal. So yeah, absolutely, all the words that you described. And we've just got a little bit here. So these aren't kind of the same as entry exams, but most universities will send you kind of an additional questionnaire to do, or a quiz, or a situational judgment test that allows them to get more information about you than just your personal statement. So now moving on to interviews. So you sent in your personal statement, you've completed any questionnaires and additional information the university want from you, and now you've been offered an interview. So first of all, well done if you get to the stage, because it's very competitive. And I think it's helpful to realise that if a university has invited you for an interview, then you have a really good chance of getting a place on that course, and they want to learn more about you as an individual. So back 5 years ago when I was applying to university, a lot of universities did panel interviews, and they've now definitely moved into MMIs. So MMIs are multiple minute interviews, almost a bit like speed dating, if you want to call it that. So you'll have 5 minutes at, say, 8 different stations, and you'll be asked one question at each of the stations with a different interviewer. And you'll be asked a complete range of topics. So here's some really common ones: so motivation for vet school, role playing, understanding vet med, work experience, personal qualities, ethics, hot topics that are in the news, knowledge about the specific vet school, and anatomy. And the best thing about MMIs is that if you do, less well on one of the stations, you have all the rest of the stations to kind of average your score out there as well. So they're not as scary, I think, as they seem. Preparing is definitely the best way to go into an interview feeling confident. If you've had a chance to firstly know what structure they're going to ask you in, kind of what common topics come up, you've had a chance to prepare answers for these, and you've had a chance to actually practice them, this is, it's probably the best preparation that you can do. And I think the students that I've tutored this year, I found it very, very beneficial. So we're going to give you the chance to do a practice question now together as well. Great, 4 players, amazing. So I would definitely recommend getting involved with this, guys. So the code is at the top again, and you just need to pop it into this website here. I'll give a few more seconds for people to join. Great, let's have a go at this practice question. So the question is, what qualities do you think makes a great vet? What qualities do you think makes a great vet? What are the values of a vet? And you can see here that this is definitely the sort of question where your work experience will make a massive difference. If you've had first-hand experience of working with vets, what sort of qualities and values do they have? This is also a very common interview question. So you've got 10 more seconds or 15 more seconds there. So you haven't put your answer in yet, definitely go ahead and do that. This is great practice. So it is, again, a bit of a trick question in that there's no correct answer. These are the answers that you've given there, and they are all absolutely perfect. So yeah, the values of a vet definitely should be compassionate, empathetic towards animals and people, and have great teamwork and skills. So really well done there, very impressed with them. Some other qualities you could have had are things like integrity, so always doing the right thing, honesty, courage, problem solving, leadership, and communication. So if you're applying as an international student, the process is maybe a little bit different. So you're still going to apply through UCAT, and you still do have to meet the minimum entry requirements of the universities that you're applying to. Some universities may require you to take an English language test, and for fees funding, definitely check with the individual university that you are applying to. So with UCAS, you get 4 choices, so definitely make sure that you have checked all of them, because there will be variations from university to university. And work experience, as we've already talked about, it says highly recommended. I'd say it's pretty much essential if you want to consider being a vet. So here's your chance to ask me absolutely anything you want about applications. As I said, I'm a fifth-year vet student and I have been tutoring for a year. I have also done MMIs for Surrey students before. So yeah, ask me any questions. There's no such thing as a silly question. And yeah, I love answering your questions. So again, the code is at the top here. You just need to pop this into this website and you'll be able to ask me anything. So just a note there as well that I'm not able to see the Zoom chat. So please, if you do have any questions, please use this code and follow it through on this website. They're all anonymous as well, so don't worry about asking something that might be silly, or, I mean, I'm sure everyone's probably got very similar questions as well. Do we have any questions? Okay, we can move on and then come back to that at the end. Oh, here we go, perfect. What happens if you don't get in the first time round? That's an amazing question. Unfortunately, it is quite a common question as well, I have to say. Veterinary medicine is so competitive, and the amount of, I'm not going to give you the exact statistics, I can't quite remember them off the top of the head. But for every place at vet school, there are multiple people going for the place. So it does happen that people don't get in on their first application. Normally this is through like A-level grades or just not succeeding at interview. It does depend on the specific university, but most universities will allow you to have a second attempt. So that's what I did. I didn't get in the first time. I resat my chemistry A-level, got some more work experience, and then reapplied the second year. And obviously, I'm here now, so it's absolutely fine. The great thing about vet school is that it's from people from like all walks of life. So there's so many people that have had gap years or people that have had second degrees, even people that have had like whole careers. So there's like a doctor of climate change on my course, which is, you know, an amazing experience to have, and because it's a lifelong career. So you get a real mix of people that apply. So you don't need to feel worried or embarrassed if you don't get in the first time, because there will be so many people on the course who also haven't. I would say, obviously, if you haven't got in through interview, definitely ask for feedback so that you can, you know, you might have interviews afterwards, or if you're applying the next year, you can work on that and definitely focus on that in your preparation. And yeah, if you decide to like take a gap year, definitely get some more placement in. That's always a good way to spend your time. And yeah, I think the life experience can be really valuable from having a gap year as well. A great question. What have we got next? What A-levels did I get? So I am a little bit different in that I got a scholarship to Surrey, so my A-levels are slightly lower. Generally, for most vet schools, it's 3 A's. Although universities like Surrey and I think a few of the others will do like A, B. If you have kind of contextualized offers, so you have any like widening participation criteria, definitely look at what support and programs the university offers. So I know Bristol gave me, they didn't give me a scholarship, but they gave me a contextualized offer. RVC do like gateway programs as well. So definitely look at that if you think there might be a barrier to achieving really high A-level results. I'd say this one's a good question. So is there any further reading? So I wouldn't recommend any like specific textbooks and things like that. I think if you're going to do some research, that's obviously a great thing to do. Definitely have a look at what's going on in the news. So you will be expected to know about current events, not just events that happened like 20 years ago. So there was a lot of questions at this year's round of interviews about things like bird flu, which caught a lot of people out. So definitely be checking on the news. I always recommend on social media following popular vet news outlets, so things like the Vet Record and the Vet Times, because they'll just keep you up to date with things that are popular and current. So that's a further reading that I would recommend. This one's another good question. Do vet schools really look at your personal statement? So it really does depend on the university. So definitely check the specifics. And I would say, even if they say they don't look at it or don't place a large amount of influence on it, definitely still do your best because it is that first point of contact. And if you end up applying for like extenuating circumstances for your exams and things like that, that personal statement is the first thing that's on your record. So it is really worth making it as strong as possible. That said, you are right in saying that not all universities place a large amount of importance on it. Especially when I applied to Surrey, they didn't really. And generally, the universities that ask you to do like harder, additional questionnaires or quizzes, things like that, will place less importance on your personal statement. But I think your personal statement is also really useful in terms of actually getting your thoughts onto paper. And I think it can be really useful before interviews to have a read over it. Firstly, just in case they do ask any questions about it. And if it's a panel interview, then they definitely will. But just so that you know in your mind kind of what your motivations are, what's been your favourite part of the process, and kind of anything that makes you stand out. It's nice to have that kind of all in one place. Great question, guys. Thank you very much for these. How should you answer questions in interviews about veterinary mental health? Would that come up? Yeah, this is an amazing question. It's great that you already have an awareness of how big a topic veterinary mental health is. Yeah, it's so important at the minute. It always has been important, but especially because we have a retention crisis in the profession. It's really, really key. It does come up in interviews because it's really something that you should know about. And I think it generally comes up in terms of like, are you aware of it? And how are you personally going to take this knowledge that you have of the issues that cause vets to have bad mental health, and how are you going to have the resilience and the forward planning to deal with that? Because I'm going to tell you that the vet course is very hard. I'm sure you probably will know that. But there will be times in a vet course where your mental health may suffer, and it's for a variety of reasons. But vet schools really need to know that you have the resilience and the coping mechanisms to deal with that. And again, these are very personal things. So it really can be anything, but definitely reflect on that and kind of what your strengths are in terms of safeguarding yourself. It's a really great question. Well done. How important is it to have supercurricular knowledge? So I think by supercurricular, you mean veterinary knowledge. I think. Feel free to send in an additional question and correct me there. It's not a phrase I'm particularly familiar with. I think, they don't expect you to go into vet school and know how to do x-rays and how to diagnose things because you're there for 5 years and they will teach you that. They definitely do expect you to have knowledge on current issues. That's definitely the main one. Other issues, or maybe not issues, but topics like who do vets report to? Have you read the day one competencies? Do you know what the day one competencies are? Things like that you should know. What is the standpoint on animal welfare? Animal welfare comes up a lot actually. So kind of common scenarios like who do we give first aid to? Can we refuse to do euthanasia? Things like that you definitely should have researched and kind of been aware of. Do all vet schools let you apply again? No, they don't, unfortunately. So definitely double check. Especially obviously if it's your second time around, because you do only get to apply to a 4, and you definitely don't want to waste an opportunity. It's very specific to the individual vet schools. So some like Nottingham, at least when I applied, you couldn't apply again if you'd had the interview. I guess because they use a similar interview every year. Other vet schools like Liverpool and Surrey, they will let you apply again, but generally you will only get to apply twice. But again, it's very specific. What's my favourite thing about being a vet? What a wonderful question. Thank you to whoever asked this. My favourite thing is working with clients. So I think it's a very common misconception that, as a vet, you just deal with animals. That's not the case at all. All animals have someone attached to them, whether that's a farmer, an owner, Even when you talk like abattoirs, they're still a farmer's property essentially. I really love the diversity of that. I love speaking to different people, and I love being someone that has this wealth of knowledge that can like share that with other people and hopefully make a difference to animals' lives through that as well. Oh, this one's a good question. Hello, Tutu. What would you say is the number one factor of an applicant that you're looking for? Academics or characteristics or communication skills? It is definitely your skill set. So especially with the MMI interviews, they will all be focused on a skill. So even if they're asking you a question like, what are the values of a vet? They're asking you to be reflective, to be forward planning. So definitely look at the skills you need to be a vet. So things like being honest, problem solving, communication, again, is a skill. Having values. How does all of that make you a good applicant for the course? Academics are very important, but I'd say they're kind of that first step that gets you through the door. So if your academics line up, then you'll be invited to an interview, and then almost always the maximum amount of importance is placed on the interview. What would you recommend someone in year 12 starts doing now to get into vet school after next year? Work experience, definitely work experience. Generally after COVID, the level of work experience required has reduced. A lot of universities will accept like an online course that you can do now as well. But yeah, I think like from my point of view as well, I kind of think like, how would you know you want to be a vet if you haven't done any work experience? Like, how do you know the different contexts of vets work in? How do you know the values of a vet? Things like that if you haven't seen it firsthand. And there can be barriers with that. So don't worry if you can't, do everything. But the placements that you do manage to get, really, show up, be present, make notes, ask questions, and don't massively focus on the specifics of what, cases you've seen, but how does the vet deal with that? How does the vet speak to the client? How does the vet speak to other members of the team? Why did I choose Surrey? Great question. I absolutely love Surrey. Obviously, I'm quite biased. For me, I wanted the mix of kind of city life and campus life. So some of the universities that are based in cities, you're only based in the city for your pre-clinical years, and then you move out into the countryside. But that kind of, I mean, for a lot of people, that's obviously great. For me personally, kind of wasn't what I was looking for. I wanted that whole university experience. So for me, having the vet school on the same campus as everyone else was fantastic. I got to live with my best friends who are all non-vets. They do like economics and finance for 4 years, which was amazing. It definitely gave me a break from vet school. Being so close to London has also been really fun and a great adventure. It's also a new vet school, which I know is a bit of a controversial topic, but it's nice to be able to have an input on how the course is run and be able to say things like, this isn't really working for me, can we try something else? Or we really like this. And I do feel that the new vet schools have a lot more freedom and kind of flexibility to make those sort of changes for students. But I mean, they're all great. And you graduate as a vet, no matter what university you go to, really. So it's just about making the right choice for you. Are there any specific questions that would definitely be asked in an interview that we prepare for? No, that would kind of be too easy, I think. And like we said, it's a skill interview. So, what is the skill in you having gone away and memorized an answer? Like really, it shows kind of nothing about you as an individual. There are kind of specific topics that come up a lot. So animal welfare, kind of common ethical scenarios that vets might be placed in. So again, things like euthanasia is quite a popular question. Generally, there's quite a lot of questions about the role of the vet, what vets can go into, kind of the diversity of that. Communication always has to come up, but that can be just talking about communication, talking about communication work experience, it can be a role play. So there's lots of variety in terms of what you can be asked. We do an online course at StudyMind where we go over each of the kind of general topics, and that is really helpful. So I would recommend definitely looking into that if you haven't already. Is working as a vet, as an animal care assistant, good work experience for vet med? Yeah, I would say so, absolutely. Just make sure that you understand the different roles. So it's a good opportunity for you to be able to observe vets, and get a really good feel of what working in the vets is like. So I would say it's really good work experience. Just make sure that you, when you go to interview, you focus on what the difference between being a vet and being a ACA is. And likewise, actually, that is quite a popular question to be asked about what's the difference between a vet and a vet nurse. Would I recommend volunteering in an animal charity like Cats Protection if you're younger? Absolutely. Volunteering in charities is amazing. I volunteered for the RSPCA before I came to vet school. Absolutely loved it. Obviously wanted to take all the dogs home. But it was great for a number of reasons. So you're getting that hands-on experience with animals, which was really set you up to be a successful vet student. And secondly, understanding what life is like running charities and kind of all the different factors that go into that is also a really, really good thing to have observed and have reflected on, because there is a massive difference between practicing veterinary medicine in a shelter and practicing it in private practices. So that, again, will make you stand out if you can demonstrate that sort of knowledge. How did I find out about scholarships? Yeah, so again, you kind of just have to research. So look at the universities you're applying to. You can even just type in things like university scholarship. And I imagine you can do that for pretty much all of the universities. And you kind of just have to do the research and look out for them. I think you could also maybe send emails to admissions as well. The email is usually always on kind of the main vet school website for universities, and find out more about the eligibility requirements, and whether you meet them or not. Generally, admissions teams are super friendly and lovely though, so definitely don't be scared to reach out if you're unsure about something. How early should we prep for interviews? That's a great question. Definitely don't leave it too late is the main point I would take away from that. I have students that have an interview in a week and they, suddenly want to go over absolutely everything for interviews. And whilst, we can always tailor the tutoring that we give to when your interviews are, it's definitely more beneficial for you guys if you can cover the content, and then we can have as many sessions as you want just to go over practice questions. And these really help with confidence, which is always the biggest takeaway for interviews as well. So I think how early, I mean, after you send your applications in and you know what universities you're applying for is a good one, you can always wait for your interview invitations as well. But sometimes these can be quite short notice. So I think, there's no right or wrong answer, but definitely earlier than later. Do I need to choose a different choice for my fifth UCAT choice? I heard you need to do this for medicine. I'm confused if you need to do the same for vet. Yeah, great question. So you do. So because of how competitive courses like medicine and veterinary are, you can only put 4 UCAS choices down. And then your fifth choice, it can be pretty much whatever you want. But you only submit one personal statement. So generally things that are related will probably get you offers for that fifth choice. It doesn't mean that you have to take your fifth choice if you don't get in the first time and decide that you want to reapply. But if you think that university is definitely for you and you'd rather go down the route of doing like a second degree, then yeah, applying for a fifth choice is a good idea. Would non-animal work experience like in a school be helpful for applying for vet med? Yeah, absolutely. This is a great one. can't believe I haven't mentioned it before actually, but so many of the skills that you need to be a vet, you can practice in non-animal ways. So I had a part-time job at Primark, which I definitely talked about in my interviews. I learned how to deal with conflict. I learned how to be organized, working under pressure, communication in a team and with like customers. So that was a great experience. It won't change the requirements you have to do for animal work experience. So you definitely have to balance that in terms of animal work experience is a set requirement, so you do have to meet it. But any extracurriculars you do are fantastic for your personal development. Things like sports teams, having part-time jobs, volunteering in a school, for example, are amazing, and they give you so many skills that you need to be a good vet and will help you out in interviews. So yeah, definitely a really good suggestion there. Oh, I'm not quite sure what this question is referring to. So if you'd like to resubmit it, I'll be more than happy to answer it. Can you get in without bio? I assume that means A-level biology. Technically, yes, if you do a very specific BTEC, which I'm not sure off the top of my head is, and that will definitely limit your options for where you can go. So you'd have to do more research into your individual kind of circumstances and whether universities would accept that. As a general rule, I would say no, especially if you are doing A-levels, you do have to do biology and chemistry. Could I apply as a vet nurse but don't get into vet school? Yeah, absolutely. A vet nurse is, again, a very rewarding career. It's very different from being a vet, so definitely make sure that you understand what that difference is and whether being a vet nurse actually is for you. Being a vet nurse, there's different routes into it as well. So you can do things like an apprenticeship, which might suit you better, or going to university. Most universities for vet nursing still have interviews and things like that. So definitely make sure that you do your prep. But yeah, being a vet nurse is a really rewarding career. It's quite different to being a vet. There's been many times where I thought, oh, I'd quite like to be a vet nurse. But yeah, definitely understand what the difference is. Again, work experience will massively help that because the roles are quite distinct and you can see what appeals to you most. Can I get in if I'm scared of animals? I mean, it kind of depends on the specifics. Like lots of students come to vet school and they are, they've had limited experience. Maybe they've grown up in a city, and then we have our first animal handling session with cows. That's quite a common one. Cows can be a little bit scary if you're not used to them. This is definitely where your animal husbandry placements will massively help if you have done them before university. But if not, you'll be in a similar position where other people may be nervous or scared or they have a lack of experience, and your university will spend the whole of first year basically getting you comfortable with how to handle animals and how to do it safely. So safely for you and also safely for the animal. I mean, if you're scared of all animals, maybe not. So the more work experience you can get and the more exposure you get is definitely beneficial. Do you have to apply for VetMed earlier if you're applying for a different course? Yeah, so the VetMed application closes much earlier than other courses. I believe other courses close in January and then VetMed courses close in October. So that's quite a few months earlier. I believe, unless it's changed, that all of your UCAS has to go in on the same day. But you'll only be applying with one personal statement anyway. And I'd say that VetMed is usually the most competitive course that you're going for. So make sure your personal statement is specific for vet medicine. And most of the courses, say you're applying for things like equine sports massage or even vet nursing, they'll understand that, it's kind of your fifth choice. And most universities will be fine with that. Did I do an EPQ? No, I didn't. Again, it's not essential. I think it can be really useful if you think about the skills that you need to do one and be successful. That can be really helpful. If you do want something veterinary related or animal welfare related or ethics, anything like that, you might be able to use it in interview questions as well. But I think, again, it's a very personal decision. The entry requirements are very high to do veterinary medicine. So I wouldn't take on extra academic work if it's going to sacrifice your performance in those exams. But I do think it's worthwhile if you think you can balance it and you're interested in it. But it's more useful for the skill side of it rather than just having it as a qualification. This is a really great question. Thank you to whoever sent this. And thank you for all your questions. They're really lovely, and hopefully I can help with them. So what is my favourite part of the application process, and what is the worst? I might be slightly biased here because, it's been a while since I've applied to vet school, and I've now helped quite a lot of people apply. So I think I might have a more like, oh, this is really nice approach than I did when I was doing it. But I think the interviews, as scary as they are, and they are high pressure, don't let anyone tell you that they're not, because they are nerve-wracking. But ultimately, they're the opportunity for you to talk about yourself and for you to show off all of the things that make you you and all of your strengths and all of your best points. As someone who's marked interviews, it's really lovely to learn more about you guys. And like I said before, if you've been invited to an interview, you have a really good chance of getting in. So yeah, make the most of it. Go for it. Kind of have to pretend that you're really confident, even if you're really nervous. But yeah, I think sometimes the interviews can be really fun as well. Definitely some of my interviews I had like practical stations, which was quite enjoyable. And things like ethical debates are also really fun. And the more you get into it, the kind of better your performances as well. I say my worst bit, I think generally, so you'll submit your UCAS and then you'll get bombarded with all of your universities and they want you to do your work experience, they want you to do situational judgment tests, and things like that. And I think for me, I remember that was quite stressful to be kind of having all these different things to do. So I think when that happens, take a step back. I asked my tutor at my college to help me, and we just made a plan of when all the deadlines were, how long things were going to take. And yeah, you get through them. It's definitely quite busy. And yeah, I found that a little bit challenging. So definitely ask for help if you need it and be prepared for that. So submitting your UCAS and then going on holiday for a week is definitely not the best thing to do. Will there ever be a vet apprenticeship? I'm not sure I'm qualified to answer that. I think my gut feeling would be no, because of the amount of content that you have to learn to be a vet. There's no real way. I mean, like courses like Surrey are kind of branded as like an apprenticeship route because we do so much of our time on placement with external providers rather than on placement with our own hospitals. But even then, we've done 4 years of pretty intense knowledge learning, and there's just no way you'd be able to pick up on that if you weren't, taught it. Because there's so many things that go wrong with animals, and there's so many different animals, and they are all different on the inside. So there is a lot of learning that needs to be done. That said, courses like Surrey are very, very hands-on right from day one. And in our 5th year, it's pretty much an apprenticeship, except that you're not getting paid. You get to go to different practices. A lot of them will hire students that they have that they've really liked as well. So it's a really good networking opportunity there as well. Why did I choose this career? So yeah, I always knew I wanted to be a vet. I've always loved animals. I love people as well. I did a lot of customer service before I came to university, so I knew that that was something I enjoyed. Yeah, I just think it's the best career ever. It definitely has its challenges. It's very rewarding knowing that you can help animals and help people, and that can be really big things. Like I really enjoy emergency medicine. When you're doing CPR and potentially you can save a life. But even little things like when you do a vaccine, you're giving that person so much reassurance that they have protected that animal for a whole year. And animals mean so much to people. You can't underestimate the impact of what that can have. So yeah, it's definitely challenging, but it's a very beautiful thing to be able to do. That's why I like it. A lot of people also like it because it's very practical. People love doing surgery, which is, it's very exciting, very hands-on. Other people like, the problem-solving aspects of it and how you put all the different pieces together to reach a diagnosis, which is also very enjoyable. And, it's a job where you are constantly learning and constantly progressing, and there is so much you can do with your degree. So yeah, there's a lot of good points of being a vet. If I'm getting C's in my subjects in year 12, is it worth applying for veterinary? So it would be hard to answer this question with 100% certainty. So I think a lot of it will depend on your personal circumstances. Like, I don't know if you feel that you have room to progress there or not. Is there any barriers which are stopping you progressing? Because if there are, looking at widening participation schemes might be helpful. So things like the Gateway program, the RVC do, and I think a couple of other universities are doing now as well. Like Surrey did a scholarship where they lowered my entry requirements. And these things aren't guaranteed. And I think you need to be honest with yourself about why it is that you're not, predicted to reach those grades. But yeah, it's a very personal question. I think, have a chat with your tutors at college about what they think. Have a chat with like trusted adults. And yeah, I think also have a think about what it is that you like about veterinary. Like, would being a vet nurse and learning in a much more practical way be beneficial as well? There's so many different careers off of being a vet. Be like a physiotherapist, or kind of the other side of it, where if you enjoy the actual learning and the kind of impact that veterinary has, going into research and doing things like biology can be really helpful as well. Lots of people do second degrees as well. The funding, I'm not going to pretend I'm an expert in the funding, but I know that it is tricky. But that potentially again might be an option if your circumstances at the minute just aren't allowing you to kind of progress with your A levels. This is a great question. If you could go back and change one thing about your application process, what would you change and why? I think my personal statement was really bad. I read it back the other day and thought, oh. And I think the key is that I didn't really pick up on the reflectiveness aspect. So you have to, like, what did you actually learn from these experiences? There's no point in just listing what you've done and what you've seen. What did you actually learn about it? And not what you learned in terms of academic knowledge, but what did you learn in terms of what does a vet do and what skills does a vet need to have to be able to do this sort of work? Luckily, so we don't put too much info on a personal statement, so I think we got lucky there. How did I structure my personal statement? That is a very big question. I would say there are lots of resources out there that will be able to cover it in a lot more detail. I think, again, just following on from that feedback, keep it personal, make it unique, and make it reflective about, really show that you understand what it means to be a vet, and then show why you really want it. Put all of your skills in there as well. If you have part-time jobs, if you're doing any after-school sports clubs, anything like that, include it in your personal statement as well, and focus on what skills it's given you. How has the uni experience been so far? It's been fantastic. I'm equally sad and kind of excited that it's over. So I've got my jobs lined up now, and I'm definitely ready to go out and actually practice as a vet. It's a very long process, but you have to believe in it. It goes so quickly. So yeah, I definitely enjoy it for what it is. You get to make lifelong friends. You learn so much outside of being a vet, like how to look after yourself and how to run a house and everything like that. And kind of when else you get to have as much fun as you do in your university already. So yeah, university is fantastic. If you can't volunteer with animals, is it fine if you do volunteering at a sports club or with people? So you do have to meet the entry requirements for work experience. So if the university specifies you have to do 4 weeks, if you apply without 4 weeks, you're not going to get through to an interview. and your application will, just be declined. So definitely don't apply to universities where you don't meet the entry requirements. Some have lower than others, but generally it's at least 4 weeks, which, you generally will be able to get, especially if you do things like online courses as well. Volunteering with sports clubs and people, as we've already said, it gives you loads of great skills. So definitely still do it. It's a very worthwhile thing to do, but don't do that at the sacrifice of not completing the mandatory work experience. How much wider reading did I do? Well, very limited, I would say. There's really no point in reading up on, actual veterinary medicine textbooks or anatomy books or anything like that, because they're going to teach you that. But definitely do read up on ethical scenarios, kind of the foundations of being a vet. So what is the RCVS? What are the day one competencies? What is the significance of them? And read up on current events, which, are constantly changing. We had COVID a couple of years ago. We've got bird flu now. There's almost guaranteed to be something, next year. So definitely know what it is that you're talking about, and kind of why they apply to vets. So I kind of just answer that question as well. And again, a great way of picking up on these things is by following vet channels on social media, just so you're constantly getting kind of your foot in the door about what is actually going on in the industry. Oh, I don't know if I've answered all the questions there. But thank you so much to everyone who sent in a question. I've really enjoyed answering them. And yeah, thank you very much. We had some really great questions there. I'll just check that we haven't got any more. Perfect. So thank you very much, guys. They were some fantastic questions. So I think I've covered most of these as well. So what are the types of questions they ask? So that'll be things like work experience, qualities of a vet, specific situational judgment. So what would you do in this scenario? And all of these things you can practice with our online course, but definitely keep those things in mind when you're doing your preparation. So we've covered this one quite a lot about personal statements. We've definitely talked a lot about work experience. Anatomy and scientific knowledge. This is a really great question. So anatomy does come up quite commonly in interviews. What I will say is there's definitely a technique to answering it. No vet school is going to expect you to have, really sound, in-depth knowledge of all the different types of anatomy. It's just not possible. Every animal is different on the inside. I couldn't tell you what some, weird species of iguana looks like on the inside. There is a specific kind of way to answer them. And really, I think the best advice I could give you is that focus on the skill behind it. So actually, in these sort of questions, they're asking for problem solving. So can you take what you already know and kind of extrapolate it and apply it to new scenarios? And can you kind of make educated guesses? You don't need to know the right answer to do really well in these sort of questions and interviews. You just have to give them a go and show that you can work through things logically. So you've already answered this one about when we should start prepping. When you hear back from interviews, again, it really just depends on the specific university. Some universities will let you know straight away. Sorry, let me know 2 days after my interview. Other universities, I think I waited like 3 months to hear back from RVC. No news is always good news. So if you haven't been rejected, it means they are still considering your application. So you just kind of have to be positive about it. What should I put as my 5th choice? Again, that's a very personal thing. You do only get one personal statement, and I imagine you're applying to veterinary because you love animals. So most universities that offer animal-related courses will not be deterred by the fact that you have a veterinary personal statement. Likewise, you can apply to pretty much any course you want. Maybe email admissions if it's something completely different to vet med though, so that they're not confused when they're reading your application. So here are some free resources for you to use. So we do actually have some free UCAT resources on our website. So that's www.medicmind.co.uk. There's personal statement guides and interview guides, and it gives you a bit more of an in-depth analysis of the entire application process. And these are free for everyone. So definitely make the most of them. We also have a free WhatsApp group, which is so helpful. You should be able to scan that now. And this is for people who are entering in 2024. So that'll be people applying this next academic year. And again, that's completely free. We also offer, as I keep mentioning, kind of a one-to-one tutoring system. So I've tutored for the last year. I think it's great. There's a 93% success rate, which is really fantastic. It gives students so much confidence, so much practice. So it's definitely worth something looking into. Over 6,000 students have used it. And you do get like a trial lesson to check whether it's the right tutor for you. And if it's kind of how you learn best as well. So we also have A-level preparation as well. So again, these are with specific chemistry or biology tutors. These are really helpful. We're going through, they're 100% personalized and 100% tailored to what it is that you want to go through. And yeah, as we've talked about, I didn't get in first time because of my A-level grades. And it is quite a common downfall, so it's definitely worth something to look in for. And they have great reviews as well. So if you want to find out more, here's some more signposting to different resources that we have. So these are all links that you can click on. Generally, if you want to check on this later, if you go onto the MedicMind website or the StudyMind website, you'll be able to find the specific vet programs, or with the StudyMind, it's the specific A-level course specific resources there as well. So thank you so much to everyone for listening. It's been fantastic to answer your questions. Hopefully I'll see some of you at the online tutoring. But please do let us know what you thought about today. If you scan the QR code and leave us a review, you have the chance of winning some free resources as well. So it's definitely worth looking into. And we would really appreciate your feedback as well. You can also leave a review using this link down the bottom here. So there we go. So there is the QR code for leaving a review there as well. So that's the end of our presentation. I'll go back to the QR code so that you have the chance to win some free resources. But thank you so much to everyone who's joined today. Thank you for listening, and thank you for asking some great questions.